Romeo, you got to believe, who's well in commission here, number 4. Lochinvar leader, Pure Grunt, Treacherous Dan on the outside of the front row. Backline, Let's Start in Heaven, Cardigan Dan, Kitzbuhel Delight, Night Fury Dan, and Smooth Buckaroo with John Keldo driving. They're close to a start. Nutrien Series 2-year-old Colts and Geldings final. Nutrien Mobile makes its way around the top turn. They're all set. Cardigan Dan runs favourite, drawn the back row, the green light's on, and they're racing. Number of horses coming out quickly from the inside. Brooklyn Dan. Romeo's got its neck in front of it and driving across, or trying to, and wider out was You Got to Believe going into the first turn. Brooklyn Dan from one's got to do enough and keep out Romeo. Leaders back into the first bend is Let's Start in Heaven, and off the track now, just sliding forward to get up outside of the leader is You Got to Believe. So it'll go to second, but the leader is Brooklyn Dan. In behind is Let's Start in Heaven. It's third, the pegs now. Round the outside, balancing up very quickly and shooting on around them is Cardigan Dan. Kicking up though in the centre is You Got to Believe. You Got to Believe trying to head off. Brooklyn Dan wasn't able to. Plenty of space appeared for the favourite. Cardigan Dan to drop into the 1-1, but it's going to press on 3 deep, and You Got to Believe kicks up again. So Cardigan Dan doing it a fair bit of work in the early part of the race. He's 3 wide and still wanting to press on with it here. Lead time in 45.4, but they've really stepped it up from that point. Cardigan Dan's out 3 wide. You Better Believe kicks up the centre, and on the inside, Brooklyn Dan keeping them both at bay. In behind them is Let's Start in Heaven as they work their way into the straight. There was plenty of space for Cardigan Dan to drop in behind and get cover. Next on the outside was Romeo. Kitzbuhel Delight 3 back along the pegs. Then came Nocturnal on the outside of Pure Grunt. They were followed by Night Fury Dan, who's on the outside of Lochinvar leader. Second last is Smooth Buckaroo, and up the tail of the field is Treacherous Dan. The first quarter was 28.5. They're at a long way from home, and the leader is Brooklyn Dan. On the outside, second, You Got to Believe's worked pretty hard. Leaders back is Let's Start in Heaven's had a pretty good run. Fourth, the outside is Cardigan Dan. Next, the inside, Kitzbuhel Delight from Romeo the centre, and looming up out 3 deep as they enter the back straight is Night Fury Dan, tracked up by Smooth Buckaroo. Then in between runners is Nocturnal. Next on the inside is Pure Grunt as they head down the back, and then came Treacherous Dan, and over on the inside is Lochinvar leader. They went 29.9 for the second split. Heading off the back straight, the leader is Brooklyn Dan. Brooklyn Dan 3 metres in front. Night Fury Dan is trying to get going on the back of now pulling out from the 1-1 Cardigan Dan and getting through off the pegs. Let's Start in Heaven. Kitzbuhel Delights run up behind them as well as they turn for home. Flat out on the inside, Brooklyn Dan grabbing it though is Let's Start in Heaven. Let's Start in Heaven. Kitzbuhel Delight down the outside was Pure Grunt. Oh, Kitzbuhel Delight and Pure Grunt out wider. Kitzbuhel Delight's got the run through, and Kitzbuhel Delight at any old price. Kitzbuhel Delight and Geordie Leedham have won it from Pure Grunt in a photo for second with Let's Start in Heaven. Then Nocturnal running on. Big run from Cardigan Dan. They were followed in then back towards the inside by Brooklyn Dan. Followed home further back in the field to Night Fury Dan. Then came Lochinvar leader with You Got to Believe, who worked very hard. And back towards the rear was Smooth Buckaroo. Romeo and Treacherous Dan were about third last and second last. 29.2 the final quarter. And it was 156.3 the mile rate for Aldebaran Park. Kitzbuhel Delight, number 10. Geordie Leedham at a huge price. Pure Grunt, also at big odds, getting into second. And Let's Start in Heaven. James Herbertson had weaved off the pegs, hit the front. But some of these 2-year-olds going from the 1700 to the 2200 tonight, they were at it a long way.